title is short in itself. It means simply the meaning of being. I put it in the shortest form possible. The answer, though, is long. The answer is a lifelong process. I would like to give some prolegomena just before entering the theme. When I talk about the meaning of being, what is being? Being has a double face. Being is a given. We find ourselves in the being. We are. A given in which everything is grounded, also our own existence. But at the same time, being is a task. It's a task of existence. I'm there, but am I really there? This is the big question. This is the existential question. I am there, but really? And how does it look like to be really there? So being has the aspect of thrownness, but also the aspect of having to be executed, grasped, taken, enjoyed, and suffered through. And there's a tension between what is already there and what should become. For this tension, for this process, meaning is central. I'm coming from Vienna. This is the hall of the university. On the right behind is the statue of, or the bust of Sigmund Freud. There's no bust of Emmy van Deursen yet, but maybe. This is the house of Sigmund Freud. He lived in the second floor. And here was Frankl living in the second floor also. Viktor Frankl, the founder of Logotherapy, 1927, and Existential Analysis, 1934. The themes I want to go through. To make it short, I first want to go with you through the logotherapeutic understanding and then try to come a phenomenological understanding of meaning, which is performed in existential analysis, and then only briefly to give you an idea that we can work with meaning phenomenologically but also methodologically, and that there are investigations. This is just nothing to learn about in that short period, but to have an idea of the practical side. Let's start with logotherapy. As you know, logos in philosophy means meaning, and logotherapy means therapy through finding meaning. We have to be aware that in logotherapy, and this is central for logotherapy and a difference to existential analysis, in logotherapy, meaning is something which is given, which is there. For Frankl, meaning is in the world, and it is like a fact which has to be discovered. And therefore, logotherapy has philosophically speaking, a metaphysical approach. Because metaphysical approaches look at the things objectively. They look at primary causes. If we have a critical point of view, then we must say that this makes logotherapy a sort of belief, comes close to religion, when it is contented that meaning is already given and has only to be found. Life has meaning under all circumstances. Very often Frankl used this phrase in his presentations, and you find it in the books. One book has the title, In the Beginning Was Meaning. He's paraphrasing the Gospel of John. Of course, such an understanding is a great message of hope for people who suffer from a loss of meaning, and when they have something to grasp on, to hold on, and get ascertained that meaning is already there, you only have to find it. And especially when such a message is conveyed by a Holocaust survivor, it has a great credibility which we cannot imagine, especially in the decades after the war. And besides of this, he was a brilliant, brilliant speaker. And logotherapy gives easier access to meaning to people who believe in God. Yalom had its critical point to Franklin's by saying that Franklin's logotherapy is somehow religious. But nevertheless, Yalom gave great credit to Frankl, and he said, continue to read Frankl. It's not easy. He's repeating himself and talking about himself. But go through it. It's worth reading it. And he gives great credit to Frankl by saying that no other psychologist, no other psychotherapist, psychiatrist spent so much time and was so much endowed or dived into the field of meaning as Viktor Frankl was. And of course, his book, Man's Search for Meaning, is a world bestseller in the field of psychology. The main contribution of Frankl was that he made the meaning concept practical for psychology, and it was no longer only a theme of religion or people who believe in something greater, in some God, etc. He made it practical and brought it into the field of working psychologically. But, and he again, he says, and this is important, he was opposing any constructivism in meaning. Meaning is something which is given and cannot be constructed in some way. It wouldn't be strong enough to carry our life, to bear, to support our existence, especially when we undergo a difficult life situation, if meaning it would be only constructed. If it wouldn't have the quality of a being. Because only what is really there, what is a truth, a subjective truth, or even an objective truth, then you can trust on it. And this is central in the message of Viktor Frankl. Constructing meaning would be like here. This is a picture I got from Frankl, he liked very much. A person who shoots an arrow and afterwards depicts the goal, and so he always hits the center. Constructed meaning. The key for finding meaning in Frankl is the Copernican turn. Copernican means it is the beginning of a new era, the existential era, we could say. Frankl really opened the door in psychology in the late 20s already to existential thinking and existential approach. It was in the air. And on this metaphysical basis, which he had as an axiom, as a starting point, the central logotherapeutic attitude in Frankl is already existential. So we have a mixture. The basis is still metaphysical, but he did a step and included existential approach, existential work with that. An attitude of openness. This is central. This is the new thing. Not just believe the Bible or any religion, but look yourself. What is the meaning for yourself in that specific situation? So, an attitude of openness, which is in itself basically phenomenological. It makes our being, our human being there, fundamentally questioned by life. So a central quote of logotherapy about this Copernican turn is here. It is life itself that asks question of man. It is not up to man to question. It's a very strict way of speaking, but it's his personality and his time also. Rather, he should recognize that he is questioned by life. We are all questioned, this is his understanding, we are all questioned by life, by that situation where we are now. The question of this situation is, can I understand, can I see what is important for me and my life? And then he has to respond by being responsible. Responsibility in Frankl's logotherapy means responding to the question of the situation, to that what is on stake, what is important, what matters me personally, because it has an objective quality. This is always important in Frankl. And he can answer to life only by answering for his life. Only me personally can answer for my existential situation in which I am. So on this metaphysical basis, Frankl really became an existentialist. To put this existential turn, to make it a bit more visible, the basis is, you see that line in between, the being in the world. The connection. I am always strictly connected with the world. Connectedness with otherness is basic. And inside, in confrontation or in confrontation, in dealing with an outside. But because the human being is a free person, everything turns into a question. Whatever I see is a question, what are you going to do with this? I have to decide of whatever I am aware of. And this brings up a power, an energy, a dynamics into our individual life. We are not just thrown into this world. We are there, positioned, and now we are co-creating our world. And the aim or the goal of a question is to give an answer, to find my answer, to responding. And so he created this schema of a dialogical reality of existence in his logotherapy. In other words, being human means, as a human being, we are always questioned. Everything what we do or not do is a question to us. Is this correct? Does it correspond to the situation, to myself? We are in a constant dialogue, exchange. And we come to life when we find our answers. And this is what patients sometimes cannot do, to find and to live their answers. And therefore, they start to suffer because they are no more essential beings. They lose themselves. So Frankl introduced a dialogical exchange with the world into psychology. But it is typical for logotherapy that the answer, that the questions only emerge out of the world. That the meaning is in the world, and this makes the difference to existential analysis, how we understand it now. Existential meaning in logotherapy, you see in the field of logotherapy, is defined as defined as realizing values. What we find to be valuable, be it experiential, be it active, be it an attitude, wherever we can be active, is a field to realize meaning. So meaning is strictly connected with values. Existential meaning is therefore defined as, this is a quote of Frankl, a possibility embedded in reality. He speaks about we have to live meaning and value in our life. And he speaks about the three main roads to find meaning, or categories of values, creative values, whenever we do something actively, when we write a book or cook a meal or do sports, as long as we experience it as valuable, as long as we see in Frankl, he doesn't use the term experience, he says as long as we see a value in it, it is meaningful. This is also a slight difference to Frankl, which may look minimal, but in the practical work it is crucial to see a value or to experience it as valuable. It's much more subjective. But in Frankl, it's seeing a value. Experiential values, whatever we see as being valuable, may it be art or enjoyment of an encounter or sexuality or whatever it is, and attitudinal values, when we cannot change the situation, then we are still able to change ourselves, to change our attitudes to a way that we can get along with what is there, that we can maybe survive or may make something good out of it in these utmost, most difficult, tragic situations of life. The search of meaning therefore mirrors our humanness. And he says that it is Frankl says that it's a human achievement to accomplish an accomplishment. We need the search of meaning because it keeps up our dignity in existence. And Frankl objected Sigmund Freud, who once wrote that this one who is searching for meaning is already sick. This can be the case in depression, for instance. It's a normal symptom to experience meaninglessness in one's life, but it's not necessarily in all the cases. So Frankl's understanding of a constant lack of meaning, the existential vacuum, is also not seen to be a neurosis or to be a sickness, a disease. It is also a human achievement. Somebody who doesn't find something which is worth living for he is on the way to realize himself as a human being, as a spiritual being, in the search of coming to an understanding of why I am there. Existential vacuum is a persistent state, felt state, suffering or numbness, of a deep feeling of meaninglessness and emptiness in one's life. It's not a clinical diagnosis. It's, let's say, an existential description. I won't even say it's a diagnosis. And it leads to a loss of interest and to apathy. With reactions in Frankl, these were the main reactions: aggression, depression, addiction, and unstable psychological health. Frankl also speaks about a meta-meaning, I call it ontological meaning or ontic meaning, which says that the meaning of the totality, the meaning of the being itself, the meaning of something which is there, the meaning of my life, which is a fact that I am there, is ontological. And this meaning cannot be understood and grasped by ourselves, because we are in it, and so we cannot come to an objective stand towards it. So the ontological meaning is a theme of religion and of philosophy. Here ends the field of psychology. To sum that up, the relation between existential and ontological meaning you see here the activity I, in the middle of my world, I am working, living day after day, and am oriented towards something valuable. I hope what we do now is somehow valuable for you. So we are all directed to this dealing with the concept of meaning and understanding. We are active. The existential meaning depends on ourselves. But there is a meaning of the totality, the horizon in which we are all standing. There is an ontological meaning. Here again shows up the double aspect of being. The thrownness on the one side, in the form of meaning of being, the total horizon in which we are put, and the task form of meaning. Now, how did we develop this? We applied phenomenology in existential analysis and worked also on the meaning field. Also, meaning in our concept is still the central part of logotherapy, and we include logotherapy. We use that, but we have slight changes, and I find them worth, especially in such an audience as we have here, where you are so phenomenological, and then it may build a bridge to a better understanding of how meaning can be conceived. Just a brief introduction. This existential analysis here, I started to call it Vienna style. It sounds a little bit like Vienna coffee. It smells this style. Yeah. Is a phenomenological existential approach which focuses on being, our being there, but this being, this thrownness, is this dealing with this thrownness is rooted in person, in this active agent, or in this, we also call it essence of the human being, me personally, that we come to such a personal life. This is the goal of existential analysis. How can I live personally in a way that I can come to a fulfillment? And this, I can come to a fulfillment only when I really become more myself, to be really there. The goal is to come to inner fulfillment. And the basic principles are that our being is, or our existence is a constant dialogical exchange, which is already in Frankl, with oneself and others. This has a bit another emphasis now. This means that I, as a person, form part of two worlds at the same time, simultaneously. I am always somehow in the outer world. I am embedded in the outer world. I am dealing with the outer world. I am breathing and eating and walking, and I am chatting and talking and working. But I am always me. I am always connected. I am the inner world at the same time. And so the question is, how can I bring together or keep together my inner world in the outer world? How can I be authentic? How can I be myself? So we are in a continuous inner dialogue and outer dialogue. This intersection or junction. So let me say, put it in that picture. We are standing on two legs, one in the outer world and one on the inner world. But we bring it together, and this forms the trunk of our body. We are only one, although we have different aspects or polarities. To bring that together, this is the great task in finding meaning. You see, I'm coming back to that picture, this draft I brought before. Our question in existential analysis looks more at this inner process. And finding or including this inner process makes the search of meaning a bit different. There is still valuable what Frankl says, and it is a short way to bring to people a first notion of how they can find meaning. But if we want to have a deeper look at, we have to look at this inner process. How can I convert the question? What makes me understand the question? And how do I find my answer? This is especially interesting for psychotherapy, for counseling. It's not that much a philosophical question anymore. It's a very practical question. Prerequisites for dialogue is this phenomenological openness, which we already had in front, but also finding and working on this inner consent. Inner consent is a key to existence. Inner consent, what does inner consent mean? Why is it so important? Inner consent means there is freedom. Consent, from where does it come? How do I find consent? We can make it practical. It's easy to speak about outer consent. Do you find consent for me to continue that presentation? So this is a risky question. I know. But the inner consent is, do I have consent before me personally to continue to listen, to remain there? You may say, yes, I feel I have a consent. Consent means, in simple words, I feel an inner yes. I don't object. I have nothing against it. I'm for it. It corresponds somehow to me. And this is an extreme human achievement, that we can find that we have a resonance. We are born with this capacity, which we can, of course, improve and cultivate. Do I have an inner consent to continue to listen, to be there? So this consent is therefore a felt sense. It's not cognitive. It must be felt. It must come out from an inner resonance. Therefore, the English word is perfect for this. Consent. Sentiment is in it. Where all sentiments come together to one, to that trunk of human being, that unity. And then it's authentic. And it is, in its true sense, in this sense, as already Frankl put, it is a responsibility, it is my personal response. It's not an image or an idea or a dictate or a preconceived concept. No, it's actually felt by myself. And it needs a dialogue before. Otherwise, I cannot come to a consent. I must deal with that reality to find, does it correspond to me or not? Consent is so central that we have it in Vienna style, the shortest description or definition of existential analysis, to help people to come to find, to expansion of existence, to be a person, to be myself, and I should do that. I see there is a need, a requirement for what I do, that it's not only a monadic life, it is a dialogical life which really deals with what is there. And when existence is based on these four dimensions, then we come to a will according to the inner consent, a will which is the real human freedom because it relates to the essence of my being. And this model has the basis to describe a psychopathology. Whenever one of these layers is not functioning, then When my being in the world is disturbed, anxiety arises. When my connection with life is disturbed, it is a depressive life. When I'm not really myself, the histrionic life starts. And when I don't see the wider context, I'm suicidal. Yalom has also these 4 dimensions, but there are slight differences. The main difference is that Yalom puts or that we are possibly radically phenomenological. And this means instead of groundlessness, which is the absence of ground, we speak about what we phenomenologically can encounter, what is phenomenologically seen. The absence of something is already an abstraction. It's a thinking. It's no more phenomenological. We look at what is really supporting there. Death is an abstraction. We look at life and its growth. Loneliness is a one-sidedness. It's also the absence of dialogue, encounter, not being really myself, etc. Personal meaning is more than just a possibility, as puts Frankl. It is the feeling of life's demand and to become fruitful. It is based within the human being. Every human being wants to become fruitful. It's not only the values which we conceive. We have a tendency, like whatever is living has to become fruitful, otherwise life ends. And so we really deeply want to become fruitful in the sense to see that I am good for something, that my existence is helpful for something. It reflects the request of our being there. But it means not only to enrich others, but also to become more myself. And so meaning can build the bridge between me and the world. And we can transcend ourselves towards the otherness and transcend the moment, the time, because what we do now wholeheartedly is done forever. In existential analysis, we don't see meaning anymore as a fact being in the world, fulfilling values and meaning, as Frankl said. We see meaning to be a signpost, a description of a dynamic towards a value. To find meaning or to see oneself in a meaning means if I continue that way, in this direction, then this will lead me to something valuable. However, whatever we understand with value, but this is of course a big discussion, and this is a theme in therapy. My direction is correct. I'm on the right way. I'm not lost. I'm oriented. This is the concept of meaning in a phenomenological understanding. So meaning is no more there, but meaning is the signpost. Meaning describes a direction, but a direction, you cannot grasp the direction. A direction, we see it only when somebody is walking. When the person stands still, there is no direction. It's a difficulty in understanding what meaning means, because it's such a complex entity. And so the meaning of being is based in the being, but is a process to become more real, to become more there, in a constant dialogue, in somehow transcending the being that is there to something more, enriched by myself, by my being there, like my own being enriched by the being of others, to become more myself and to contribute more to the world in which I am, to my family, to my clients, etc. We can ask ourselves, am I? The question, this is the question, what I can be. Am I, for instance, the partner to my partner? Am I the father, the mother to my child? Am I really the one? And what am I asked more? Is there a specific question, a specific need, a request, an offer, a possibility, something beautiful to share, to be there, which gives the other, or what I can give especially? Meaning is no longer a substance which is given, but it emerges from the inside and outside. It means to make my life meaningful in a continuous interaction with myself, in a continuous work with myself. Look at myself. Frankl didn't want to do that. This was one reason why he split from us, because we said this is so important, and self-experience is so important for psychotherapists. But we find it is important that we are in a constant inner dialogue. Speak to myself, try to understand myself better, deeper, refine myself, work on myself. I can grow up to the last breath of my life. And also to interact with others, with the world, to be present there, to enjoy, to play, to laugh, to weep, to suffer, to let be helped and to help. And giving what I'm able to give, and being ready to receive what is offered to me, and to engage for what I need and for what others need. It has a spiritual dimension, to make that short. Ontological meaning in parallel, this meaning of everything, of the whole, cannot be grasped, known, observed, but it can be sensed, intuitively felt. Every human being has, this is the spiritual content of meaning, which is always there. That we have a feeling, some understanding, maybe a verbal understanding of what it means to exist, to be there within an overall context. There is an ungraspable meaning of life. And in psychology, we do not work with religious contents, of course. We send people to their religion, back to their religion. But what we do is we can ask them, what is your idea? Or do you have an inkling of the form of embeddedness in our existence? Does it have a meaning at all? For Yalom, it is absurdity, and for Sartre. But for Frankl, there is a greater meaning. These are positions which we believe there is no science which can talk about that. These are positions for which we decide. And we are responsible for this decision, but we should decide only after having had a look at the inside, and to look at what we can feel, sense, to look if we have an inkling. So I'm almost coming to the end. We started a bit later, but to have a look at methods, I would need about 10 more minutes. So to give an idea that there are possibilities to work practically. When people say, for instance, I don't see any meaning in what I'm doing here, then a first method is to apply all these 4 steps of the existence, these 4 dimensions, to posit, to embed the meaning question into that broader horizon of existence itself. Because meaning, in our understanding, is the feeling that something is not going well, that my direction is not okay. So this may depend on the first dimension of existence, that I'm not really harmonized with reality. It may depend on the emotionality, that I don't really feel the values which I'm living for. It may be connected with my individuality, that it does not really correspond to me, that I don't have access to my authenticity. It may be connected to the greater context. For what am I doing this? Because my horizon in which I'm working, in which I'm in that enterprise, in this firm in which I'm working, is changed. And so I'm asking myself, is it still good to continue there, or my relationship? So to see my embeddedness. So meaning is always a question of orientation. And this orientation has this being in the sense of belonging to somewhere. Where is my home? Where do I belong? My homeland, my rootedness, my field of activity and context. And it is this from this starting point, this going towards, this giving my life a direction, to bring it to a development, to a becoming, to make more of it, to not simply having fulfilled our being there by just being, but to becoming more, to be more practically present in this world. Another method is the logotherapeutic meaning searching method, which is based on the definition of meaning. Here, this is a very practical way of doing counseling without, maybe in one session you can do that, or in 2 or 3 sessions, really helping people to come to practical terms. It may also last a half a year to work on that. Perception of the world, again, what is the situation, what is possible for you? You know, we are now focusing the theme of meaning, and within this focus, the work is phenomenological. We are searching together. We are bringing the question to the client. The evaluation, how important and worthy are these possibilities for you? To make a decision, to select, to take out what do you really want, bring yourself into the situation, and then come to action. When and by what means can you do it? The method of life horizon, this is a very phenomenological procedure which combines the Frankl's understanding, a key point of Frankl's understanding, with the phenomenological process. The first step, reference to the loss. When you lost meaning, what happened? Something crucial happened in your life. And let us take the narrative, let us listen, let us just be there to the client, or to the person, need not be a client. Why did you lose? What makes it so meaningless? And let them talk about their suffering and about their own understanding. And what fixed ideas of meaning have been there before? That life can only be life and meaningful life when you are young and happy and rich, and have 4 children and a good relationship. So these are such fixed ideas of meaning, which are a form of ontological meanings, or making that meaning so a substance. We have that tendency, and we sometimes can help people to loosen themselves from such rigid ideas of meaning. And this can happen. This happens just in that first step. In the second, then connect with your former life. Look at what was meaningful in your life, and why was that meaningful. Learn from what you have experienced before. How did you behave in that time when your life still was meaningful? And then the third step is Frankl's Copernican turn. For us, it's not a Copernican turn, it's an existential turn, a turn towards this phenomenological openness. We teach our clients and patients to become themselves phenomenological, more phenomenological to themselves and to their environment. What does this situation want from you? This is Frankl's key concept, the turn from the not knowing the ontological meaning to the existential meaning. We do not know why this happened, but we can ask ourselves, what am I asked to do with that? Without knowing why it happened to me. Why do I have cancer? The answer, I don't know. But the existential turn is, are you able to live in a way that something good can still come out from your life if you continue in that new way, letting go your wishes and ideas you had before, your former concepts, looking for a new becoming in that new situation. There are investigations, just very briefly. My colleague in Vienna, Tuch, and several other colleagues made an investigation in 2000, asking 200 people, 100 patients and 100 on the street. 96% of them said that they have been confronted with the meaning questions in their life. But 11% say meaning doesn't play any role in my life. And they fulfilled the existential scale. So we measured their meaning level and found that these 11% have the best results in the existential scale. Oh, maybe this was for nothing what we talked about. Already Frankl had this notion, and we found a contest in that. When you have found meaning, it's no more a question. It's so natural. We live it. We don't think about it. Just a last investigation, Debatz in Holland, found in a clinical group that the general meaning, the religious meaning, helps to reduce stress, makes people more happy, and helps to improve self-esteem. But the existential meaning makes them more active. The well-being itself increases only when they become active, and the progress in therapy and the healing process is strongly connected with an existential understanding. It's not enough to believe in God. It is important that I find what I have to do here and now. There are 24 RCT studies around meaning concepts, mainly on sleeping disorders, anxieties, meta-analysis on meaning work. I'm concluding with this last slide. Meaning is a powerful concept. It is a dimension of existence for orientation, for finding a content, and for authentically come into a becoming. And Frankl quoted Nietzsche most often, and this was the quote he used most often. And he put it in his own wordings by saying, "He who has a why to live for, when I know what for I am living, when I have a reason, when I have a why, can bear almost anyhow." And this is what he experienced himself in the concentration camp. Maybe we can take this perspective out into our life and be aware that when I feel connected to the values, to my partner, to my child, to my work, to my philosophy, to my clients, then I have a why. And then I can work with 10 clients a day and have all the difficulties of the life with our children and their sickness and problems and our own problems. when I have a feeling, even maybe an inkling, that it may have or lead to something good. But only then. Thank you.